On this edition of SciTech Now, find out how one Adirondack town is showing the rest of rural America how to get on the internet fast lane. Check out the efforts of a group trying to make race irrelevant when it comes to success in science and technology.
It has very little to do with how many computer science degrees that minorities and women graduate with. It has more so to do with the employment pipeline.
Then we sit down with hackers as they crack open the digital universe and discover how one shipping company is making shipping as simple as taking a photo with your cell phone. That's coming up next on SciTech Now. Hello, I'm Simon Perez, and welcome to SciTech Now, our weekly program bringing you the latest breakthroughs in science, technology, and innovation. Let's begin with a problem that is common in rural towns in America. Even though much of modern life revolves around the internet, many small towns still don't have broadband. But right here in the Adirondacks, innovators are figuring out how to get on the information fast lane.
Towns like Thurman, nestled inside the Adirondack Park, are hard to reach.
Thurman's very rural. You cannot buy gas in the town of Thurman. You can't buy a gallon of milk in the town of Thurman. It's very community-oriented, very quiet, peaceful town.
Everyone knows everyone, but in a major way, they're disconnected. Much of the town still uses dial-up or drives to the local town hall Wi-Fi hotspot for internet service.
Without broadband access, little communities like this one aren't going to survive very well. It makes a huge impact on your entire community. Your children can't do their homework assignments, so they're having to choose between sports and getting their homework done, college applications. It affects every aspect of life, how you shop, how you bank, everything. And if it's not something that it's accessible to your community, people aren't going to come or stay in your community.
Like many other New York towns, Thurman is taking initiative, but moving in a direction few have gone before. They're one of the first communities in the country trying to create a residential white space network.
In the Adirondacks, especially in the Adirondack Park, we face a couple of unusual challenges that you don't find elsewhere in the country. For one thing, the Adirondack Park Agency restricts us from building on peaks or ridgelines. So we can't just put a tower on top of some mountain. For another thing, when you do wireless, the existing technologies before the white space technologies would not pass through trees and leaves, which means you could not do wireless networks. So the benefit of the white space is the fact that the signals are much lower frequency and they travel through the trees.
The goal is to transmit high-speed internet to residents using white space, or the unused portions of the analog TV spectrum. It's perfect for rural areas, since they tend to have more open channels than cities. On this day, they're still in the testing phase, determining the best locations to put radios to relay the internet signals across the town.
It's a matter of a relay, bouncing signals from one spot to the next. What we are doing is we are borrowing or renting a space on the fiber from Frontier or Verizon, and we will plug into that. And then we will be extending that and cover a certain radius of houses that will get this. And then within that radius, then we find another spot and we bounce the signal to the next area.
One thing they already have figured out, where to place the heart of the network.
This is the center of Thurman's White Space Project. We're on South Johnsburg Road at the highest point of the road. And along this road is the fiber that we intend to tap into. We have to the right, Frontier's fiber on a pole. We also have Verizon on the very same pole. So we have both carrier diversity and route diversity. Test antenna, the base station, it's mounted actually to a tree, so it's up in the leaves of the tree. And from here we hope to cover the road going to the north, going down to the south, and west out to Garnet Lake.
This town pulled together to procure a grant through the statewide Connect New York Broadband Initiative. Those funds cover the cost of testing and constructing a residential network.
There we go.
Other white space experiments in Virginia and California, for example, were conducted using older models.
It's been tested in a few areas of the country. The FCC has been working on approving it for several years and had done so, I believe it was the end of 2011, in December, they finally approved the use of it. The equipment was not available until early this year. So any trials that were done elsewhere in the country were using first generation equipment from a different vendor. So we're now on second generation equipment, which has much higher capacity.
We've had businesses close down because they don't have internet, they can't process credit cards, they can't get online. They've actually had people stop their sale to buy a home here when they found out there was no internet. We're hoping that once we get Thurman up and running and everybody else sees what we were able to do, we feel certain that it'll just take off everywhere.
If testing continues according to plan, they're hoping to begin the building of the actual network during the summer, having everything up and running for residents by early autumn.
Nearly 20 million people in the United States still don't have broadband. A group in Oakland, California is trying to make it so race doesn't show up as a factor in determining whether a student gets interested in pursuing a career in science, technology, engineering, or math. PBS NewsHour weekend anchor and SciTech Now contributor Hari Srinivasan spoke with the head of Kino Labs and its effort to bring racial change to the tech landscape.
2%, that is the self-identified number of African Americans that work at some of the biggest tech companies in America. And there is somebody trying to change that. Kalima Pryforce works with Kino Labs in Oakland, California, joins us now via Google Hangout. So that's a pretty drab statistic when you think about an innovating and cutting-edge industry, that there is this huge gap in the representation of people in the workforce that doesn't reflect America.
Yeah, and it has very little to do with how many computer science degrees that minorities and women graduate with. It has more so to do with the employment pipeline. How many people know or have friends at Google or Facebook or other technology companies, and those who do work at those technology companies tend to hire those who sound and look like them and went to the same tennis clubs, and so it's really about being able to make sure that a lot of our technology companies are connected to and plugged into all of our talent throughout the United States.
So how does Kino Labs work? What are you doing to try to fix this problem?
So Kino Labs, we make hackathons. We make hackathons for what we identify as high potential youth in low opportunity settings. And these hackathons are technology events where young people are able to build an app within a day or 3 days, typically 3 days, and that app reflects their experiences and some of the problems that they want to solve. And we support them by providing them with the trifecta of what it is to build an app.
What's the trifecta?
The trifecta are the developer, the designer, and the innovator. The developer is the coder, the programmer, who we call the hacker. Then we have the designer, who's the artist, and a person who decides where the buttons are going to be on that app. And then you have the innovator, the person who is able to figure out how to solve the problem, what are the solutions, talks to people, figures out what's the data that needs to be there in order to make the right choices around the solution.
So the students come up with the idea for the app.
Yeah, they usually comes up with the idea for the app. So a lot of young people they're automatic innovators when they come up and pitch at the beginning of our hackathons. And then they get to shadow one of the three throughout our hackathon. And
Okay.
so we expose each of our young people to a certain level of coding, but it's up to them as to who they shadow, because our hackathons really place an emphasis on mentorship, because we believe that mentorship is how you create that pipeline.
Okay, and so what does this do for, we're not using the phrase at-risk youth, we're using this sort of low opportunity, high potential youth, right? So, well, what does this do to a child that comes from one of these neighborhoods or one of these schools where this was not an option before?
What it does is that it exposes them. It exposes them to a world outside of their own. When I grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, I grew up in a group home, and I had a hunger strike against my group home when I was 8 years old in order to get more books into our library. And so the first thing I did as a kid was that I hacked my own isolation. Mm-hmm. So I became a technologist when I was around 14, 15, started my first computer company when I was 16. But what made me a hacker, which is about exploring the limits of what's possible, altering the parameters of something, what started when I was 8 years old. And a lot of those kids, a lot of our kids, they want to hack their own isolation. So imagine that kid who wants to go to space camp, that kid that wants to become a chemist, and they get to actually be in a lab. So we give them that experience for those 3 days of what it is for the entire world to sort of cater to their curiosity.
So how do you measure your success? Of the students that have gone through this, what's happened to them now?
Sure. So one of our young people, Victoria Pinnell, when she learned about our hackathon, she encouraged her mom to take her. And so our hackathon that she attended was in New Orleans, and she lived in New York City. And when they couldn't take a flight to New Orleans, they drove. They drove from New York City to New Orleans, and she gave us a pitch of her app idea while she was in South Carolina on the road. And by the time she arrived in New Orleans, there was already a team there waiting to help her develop an anti-human trafficking app. And since then, she has been working on that.
So how many students go through a hackathon, or how many students do you work with now per semester? How does it work?
Sure. So we launch hackathons per city, per event. We maybe do about 1 or 2 a month. And then through organizations, local organizations that we work with and partner with, then we're able to recruit a lot of those young people, as well as we keep the hackathon experience as open and public as possible for young people to apply. And so they apply, and then once they're accepted, because usually we have around 60 slots for young people, and then we may get about 120, twice as many applicants. And so, and then once they go through that process, then then they're our kids for those 3 days. And then we make sure that after the hackathon, that they're still plugged in to local organizations.
So do you set up, or do they get access to, say, internships at some of these tech companies after they've done something like this? How do you kind of plug them into that pipeline, which we talked about in the beginning, that was lacking in this diversity and talent?
Yeah, so it's through our local partners that they get plugged into opportunities. We sort of lay out opportunities, and even during the hackathon, we're working with various partners and sponsors to see what we can do to provide a portfolio of experiences for them outside of the hackathon, post-hackathon.
Okay, so what's next for Kino Labs?
We're launching 8 hackathons next year. I believe we're launching about 1 or 2 outside of the United States. I believe Ghana and Johannesburg.
And how do you get the funding for all this?
So when I came on board with this idea, because we started off as a software development company, so we were completely for-profit, but we just focused on impact, and so we were developing education software. When we decided to do hackathons, and we did hackathons after the George Zimmerman verdict, when we decided that, let's create a technology event around the idea of could an app have saved Trayvon Martin. But in order for me to fully grasp and get excited about this work, I wanted to make sure that we weren't providing a service, that we were actually providing a product that could be sold. And so we work with organizations, big companies who come to us and say, we want a hackathon. And we give them the paperwork and let them know what the budget is for the hackathon, and then they essentially buy a hackathon.
All right, Kalima Pryforce, good luck with it, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Apparently, there are plenty of opportunities out there. According to Kino Labs, nearly 1.5 million jobs that require computing skills will need to be filled by 2020. Each year, thousands of people around the world participate in hackathons. This isn't the kind of hacking that cracks firewalls and shuts down websites. Instead, these hackers are coming up with the next big tech idea. SciTech Now contributor Andrea Vasquez takes us to an all-night hackathon where programmers, designers, and innovators explored the digital universe.
So our project is called Adopt a Planet, and we're basically building a website in which a user could log on to and name a planet.
Connecting people like on planet Earth, like normal people, with things in the universe of the galaxy.
So basically we're taking up like Copernicus's like column and trying to bring that to like, I don't know, the 7 or 8 year old brain.
Programmers, developers, and astrophysicists had stars in their eyes as they brainstormed for Hack the Universe, a 24-hour hackathon at the American Museum of Natural History.
A hackathon is, how to describe this? It can be anywhere from 12 to 72 hours, but it's, I guess in its crux, it's a time where a group of developers, designers, content experts focus on a particular problem or set of challenges to build something from scratch.
Hackers may create fun projects that have little practical use, or they may come up with the next big startup. Either way, when time's up, teams must present what they've come up with, no matter what form it's in.
It might be wireframes and mock-ups. It might be something fully coded but just decides not to work in that moment. That's absolutely will happen, guaranteed. And then sometimes you're really surprised and you come out with something fully formed that could end up inspiring the next thing that a company wants to build or an organization wants to take on.
Hackathons started in 1999, and since then thousands of people have participated in these events all over the country and the world, focusing on topics from cybersecurity to education to the universe.
The Industrial Revolution brought about big telescopes, but the computer revolution really brought this information revolution that continues under Moore's law to get bigger and bigger increases in computer speed that allows us to really process and then display this data.
The countless hackathons held around the world often create apps or tackle business or social problems. But the programming is also a necessary tool for age-old scientific fields.
These data sets are huge. I think astrophysics makes the most sense to have computer science involved because you can't do this by hand, right? This data set is all of the known universe. You can't crunch those numbers in Excel.
The ones that I'm most interested in these days are kind of the more whimsical ones. There's a lot of energy just because like people are really interested in the subject matter, and then you have a really cool environment like this, which is like missing from a lot of hackathons.
Before any hacking begins, teams are given the museum's data on the universe. It's the same information, measurements, distances, that Carter Emmert, the museum's director of astrovisualization, uses to create a virtual map and 3D tour of our universe.
We're going to present our digital universe, which is this data set that brings together the different set of objects that make up our galaxy and then the galaxies beyond. It's a bit of diving into the unknown, but that's what's exciting about a hackathon.
Hacker teams are diverse, so that a programmer's coding skills are balanced with an astrophysicist's or other so-called content experts who interpret and contextualize the data.
I work with a lot of numbers, and it's kind of nice to, step back and look at the beauty of what I'm actually studying, which I don't get to do that often.
Beyond the mix of skills at the hackathon is a different kind of diversity.
We have some students, we have people who have been coding for only a few months, and this may be one of their first hackathons, all the way up to, pretty senior level people who this is what they do for fun.
And women. There's no data on women's average participation at hackathons, but Wallace estimates from her experience that it's about 10 to 15%. At this Hack the Universe event, the ratio was 50-50. Christina Wallace, founding director of the museum's Bridge Up STEM program, says the initiative's goal is to draw young women into science and computer technology.
It's not a slider.
So that's dark matter on off?
Dark matter. Those sort of programs, which are like geared towards attracting more women, they do work because they create this environment that's like safe for women and that actually has a real genuine community that cares about women. So.
The turnout validated the mission of the Bridge Up STEM initiative, which includes programs to encourage high school girls to major in computer science, bring coding into underserved middle schools, and help teachers get up to speed with professional development.
This program is really focused on access, which is one of the museum's most important thrusts, and it's access for young women and training for young women in this field, but also for underrepresented youth generally.
When I first told people I was coming to AMNH to build Bridge Up STEM, their first reaction was always, why is a museum with dinosaurs teaching computer science? And when you put it that way, it may seem disconnected. But when you dig a little bit deeper and you realize how much science actually goes on here, that we have, tenured curators that are doing research on the cutting edge of their field, and not just in dinosaurs and paleontology, but also in evolutionary biology, in astrophysics, in all these different areas, and these data sets are huge.
And that's why the team spent all night, fueled by pizza and enthusiasm, hacking away at vast amounts of data in an attempt to make something useful and accessible from something so dark and distant.
It is a graphical representation, but it's deeper than that because it does represent this tremendous effort by science, which is international. It represents everyone in the world that puts this together.
The museum says it's planning more hackathons. For more information on the American Museum of Natural History, including hours and directions, you can log on to our website. A San Francisco-based company called Shyp, that's S-H-Y-P, is making shipping as simple as taking a photo with your cell phone. PBS NewsHour weekend anchor and SciTech Now contributor Hari Srinivasan spent some time with Shyp's co-founder.
Lots of us use the internet to buy things online, but how do they get to us? The shipping industry is actually ripe for disruption, and we're talking to someone today who's the founder of Shyp. He is trying to, and his company is trying to disrupt the shipping industry. So how do you change shipping? It's something that we're all relatively familiar with now on how it gets to us in either a brown truck or a FedEx truck or somehow, right? What are you doing different?
So what we did, myself and my co-founder, we really looked at what the problem was, and it was really that you have something that you want to get somewhere else. And that's really all the information that you should need to ship something. So when we looked to develop the first product, which is an iPhone app, that's literally all you need to do. You take a picture of whatever you want to ship, tell us where it's going, and we'll show up in about 20 minutes and handle everything for you, from the packaging to selecting the cheapest service level, the carrier, all the way up into the tracking to it arrives at its end destination.
Any sized item, any shape item?
Anything that could fit in the backseat of a car is what we're handling right now.
Okay, when you say anything that can fit in the backseat of a car, that could, let's say that's a pretty heavy set of books. How much am I going to pay for that?
We look at all the major carriers and we'll actually send it through the lowest cost solution for you. So the service that we offer, as well as the packaging, is actually choosing the best option for you. So you could always, we have a guarantee that we'll always get you the lowest retail price for it.
So you're essentially taking out or replacing the last mile or the first mile. You are not buying planes and trucks and everything else. You're letting those experts do that, but you're getting it from where I am and where the object is into that stream.
Yeah, we really see our business as being asset light. We're solving the biggest pain point, which is really the first mile. It's getting those unpackaged items into the rest of the shipping network, which works amazingly well. But the first mile is really something that can still be improved, and that's what we're aiming to tackle.
Who are your competitors?
A competitor would probably be your pack and ship stores that are around your location. We don't charge for packaging. All we do, we charge a $5 pickup fee plus the retail cost of the cheapest shipping option. We're not just looking to solve the inner city moving of goods. So this is what an Uber Rush would do, for instance. What we're doing is we're solving the pain point of the first mile of a multi-mile journey anywhere in the world. And actually, the majority of our customers are e-commerce retailers.
If you're only charging the consumer $5, and you're not charging them for any packaging, and you're letting the price of USPS or UPS or FedEx be the bulk of it, how does Shyp make money?
How we make money is really on the difference between retail that we charge our customers to what we get the shipping rates for. UPS truck, if they were to go and make 1,000 pickups within a major city, it's very expensive. But when they use a service like us, we will package everything and even give it to them on a pallet. They have one stop, and it actually saves them a lot of money, which they in turn gives really high discounted shipping rates, and that's how we make our money on that, the difference between those prices. And then we're able to offer an amazing service for actually cheaper price than you doing it yourself.
Let's say I'm going to send an odd-shaped item, whether it's a set of skis or whether it's let's say it's an art object, that's a weird sculpture. How are you going to protect my belongings?
That's one of the things that we've really invested in is the technology to create custom boxes. We've all kind of received a package from Amazon, a tube of toothpaste in this really large oversized box. But what we do is actually we'll create custom boxes for every single object, and it's within 0.1 of an inch. So imagine a machine that entering in 3 dimensions and it just spits out a perfectly sized box. And that's exactly what we do. For one, it's better for the environment. We're not shipping air essentially. You could pack a truck with more items, which is really great. But for the consumer and the businesses that we offer the service to, it's a reduction in the cost of shipping.
Okay, Kevin Gibbon from Shyp, that's SHYP.com. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
Just last month, Shyp announced its Android version of its app. You can use Shyp in San Francisco, New York City, and Miami. That's it for this edition of SciTech Now. For more information on science, technology, and innovation, visit our website at wcny.org/SciTechNow. And you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter. Next week on SciTech Now, technology and social media come together to make rundown neighborhoods attractive again. Find out more about a world-renowned research lab pushing to close the gender gap in science. What could possibly make math fun? We'll take you to just such a place. Swim with a reptile that's been around for 160 million years. And discover how computer-operated lasers are revolutionizing an ancient art form. I'm Simon Perez. We'll see you next week on SciTech Now.